Welcome to Oyate Today. Oyate in Lakota means people. Brought to you by Native Sun News Today. Hi, welcome to Oyate Today. I am your host, Richie Richards. Oyate Today is produced by Tim and Jackie Gallego. Tim is an enrolled member of the Oglala Sioux tribe. Our guest today is Dr. Donald Warne of the Department of Public Health at the North Dakota State University. Thank you for being here, Dr. Warne.
Yeah, very happy to be here.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing in our community. I'm anxious for our viewers to learn more about what it is that you're involved in and what it is that you have been involved in, so I'm very anxious for our discussion.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I was very fortunate to grow up in a family with a lot of traditional healers, and my uncles include Rick Two Dogs and Virgil Killstraight, and I was able to learn a lot about our traditional medicine from them when I was growing up.
And then you later went into Western medicine and
Yeah, that's right. So I have a medical degree from Stanford University and also have a Master of Public Health from Harvard University. And I've worked in a number of different arenas in healthcare. But really it's all rooted in traditional values and traditional culture. And one of the stories that I was told when I was very young was a story of three sisters walking along a river. And I'm sure many of our viewers have heard this story before, but it really does guide a lot of my work. And in this story, there are three sisters walking along a river, and they find young children and babies in the water struggling to stay afloat. So the first sister jumps in and says, "This is an emergency, it's a crisis. We need to get the babies out of the water right now." And the second sister says, "No, we need to teach them how to swim so they can survive while they are in the water." And the two sisters go into the river, and the third sister keeps walking upstream. So the other two sisters get angry and say, "Where are you going? Why aren't you helping us?" And she says, "I'm going to find out who's putting these babies in the water, and I'm going to stop them." And from my perspective, that's public health, working further upstream and trying to prevent issues from occurring rather than waiting until it's a crisis. And it correlates to what we do in medicine and public health very closely. And when we think about Indian Health Service and our lack of resources and the health disparities that we face, we spend most of our energy being that first sister, dealing with the crises, dealing with the emergencies. And we do some work in secondary prevention, trying to help people manage diabetes or manage other types of chronic diseases. But we don't spend nearly enough energy or resources on prevention in the first place. And that's really, I think, the areas that we need to pursue.
So do you feel, I guess from that summation or that lesson or that story, do you feel that we are kind of directing our funds and our monies towards areas that are kind of after the fact, or dealing with
the crises as
the
they're
crises.
occurring? Yeah, that's really where most of our resources go. And certainly we have a bad combination of very impoverished populations, but also our health system itself is impoverished, when we look at Indian Health Service. So we have to spend our resources dealing with emergencies and with crises and dealing with life or limb types of illnesses. And as a result, we don't have the resources to be that third sister working further upstream. Sure. And we have terrible health disparities. I'm sure people are aware of our very high rates of death due to things like diabetes and cancer and heart disease, but also other issues that related more to mental health with addiction and suicide. So we have to look at this in a more comprehensive way, and I think we have a lot to learn from our traditional perspectives and traditional culture, because we spend a lot of time in crisis management, managing amputations for diabetes or dialysis, or dealing with cancer when it's at a late stage, or dealing with addiction and when there's a crisis associated with it, but not enough on prevention. And I think, again, we have a lot to learn from our traditional healers on how to best do that.
Sure. So I guess Western medicine calls that holistic healing, but how important and what role do you feel that plays, say, for a sweat lodge ceremony, a Sundance ceremony, or any of the traditional ceremonies in the area? How important is that in conjunction with what you're doing, or what the current, what's done with current medicine, Western medicine?
Well, I was very fortunate to grow up in a family with traditional healers and traditional leaders. And my mom, Beverly Stabber Warne, is a very traditional person, and my brother and I were able to grow up understanding our approach to things, which is more holistic and more humane in many ways. And My uncles, Rick Two Dogs and Virgil Killstraight, and growing up I was able to learn a lot from them as well. So I think that if we looked at our healthcare system now, we are forced in many ways to deal with crises because we have such terrible disparities. But if we were more intelligent as a health system, we would work further upstream and recognize that there are some common elements to all of our disparities. And if we look at issues related to historical trauma and how much our people have had to deal with over generations, but also boarding school experiences. Some people had good experiences in boarding schools, but many people had horrible experiences in boarding schools. And then looking at adverse childhood experiences and growing up with abuse or neglect, those are predictors of poor health outcomes as we get older. So we see strong correlations between unresolved trauma and higher rates of things like addiction and depression and suicidality. But we also see correlations between adverse childhood experiences and higher rates of diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. So when I think about that third sister going upstream, what she is trying to do is to resolve the trauma that we've been facing, emotional and spiritual trauma, and recognizing that it really is in that space with spiritual trauma, emotional and mental trauma, where we're not able to live in a healthy way. And from my perspective, our traditional healers understand that very well, and they recognize that all things are connected. You know, when we say mitakwe, oyase, we mean it. You know, we are all related, and all things are interconnected. And I think one of our challenges in medicine is that we spend a lot of resources focusing on diabetes or cancer or heart disease, or resources on addiction, but we're not focusing on the root cause, and the common cause for all of it is unresolved trauma.
So in some way, shape, or form, then I guess basically the third sister that's swimming upstream, we're more concerned with what's happening in the past, more or less. I guess that's a way of saying that if we deal with that trauma, deal with that historical trauma and the trauma of our, ancestors and how that has gone through the generations, if we deal with those issues of that historical trauma which leads to our behavioral health, and we're not getting that exercise, we're not getting the proper diet, we're not getting the things that are, I guess, congruent to helping with a much healthier lifestyle in our own personal lives, in our families' lives.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that's, again, from my perspective, the role for traditional medicine and inipi and other ceremonies. When I Sundance and with my uncle Virgil and other relatives at the Whitelands Sundance in Kyle, and I look around at the young people and I just have this sense that they're safe. They're going to do well because they're so connected culturally and so dedicated to our ways. And I look at that as a public health intervention, that if we can promote culture and language and connectivity and participation in ceremonies in whatever degree we can, starting at a young age, I think that's one way to prevent trauma, but also to resolve some of the challenges that we face. Our ceremonies are powerful, and they are truly public health interventions. So I see a very strong role for resolving our issues through our traditional culture.
Yeah, in some instances, I've heard of a person being cured of cancer, or those cancer cells were no longer present after doing such ceremonies. Have you heard any such stories such as those?
Yes, I have heard those stories, and I've seen individuals who've had significant health challenges. And then, and I see it really as an opportunity to integrate. When we say all things are connected, we should look at modern medicine as just one tool in the toolbox, and as Lakota people, as Oyate, we have an incredible toolbox, when we think about traditional medicine, not just in the terms of the herbal remedies and the specific medications, but also in the holistic and spiritual healing. And there's not a pill or a medication that's going to resolve trauma. That has to be done through therapy and ceremony. And I think that we have tremendous opportunities to address it if we integrate traditional medicine and modern medicine.
Sure. Dr. Warne, we're going to take a break here and get a word from our sponsors. But when we get back, I'd like to learn a little bit more with your work with NDSU and some of the other things that you're working on with local tribes, regional tribes. So we'll be back after a word from our sponsors.
Our school has great students and dedicated teachers, but we need our community volunteers to help us to provide a broader view of the many ways a good education can point to a bright future.
Did someone say volunteer? Our team at Black Hills is here to help. In fact, we sponsor events and projects, and our employees volunteer for organizations throughout the Black Hills, including partnering with schools to help students learn more about life outside the classroom. Extracurricular, extra fun.
We are not so different, you and I. We may be from different places, but the sun that greets me in the morning, the sun that warms the hills, is the same sun that greets you. We are all connected. We are all family. Mitakuye Oyase.
Native Sun News has been voted the best weekly newspaper in its class for 2015 by the South Dakota and North Dakota Newspaper Associations. You can find a copy of the Native Sun News at many businesses and vending machines in Rapid City and the surrounding area, and on all 9 reservations. We publish every Wednesday, so advertisers and subscribers can reach our diverse readership by calling 605-721-1266. The Native Sun News covers the other side of the story.
Maybe know that earning a GED can increase your lifetime earnings, can be a first step into a university or technical institute. But maybe you don't know how easy preparing for the GED test is anywhere in the Black Hills. Classes are free, a service of the Career Learning Center of the Black Hills and Black Hills Special Services Cooperative. Go online to learn more or call. Earning a GED can change your life.
Hi, welcome back to Oyate Today. I'm your host, Richie Richards. Our guest once again is Dr. Warne of NDSU. So Dr. Warne, could you tell me a little bit about some of the things you're working on with North Dakota State University? I understand you're the chair of the Department of Public Health there as well. So could you talk to me a little bit about some of the work you're working on?
Absolutely. So at North Dakota State University, we have a College of Health Professions, and that houses our School of Pharmacy, School of Nursing, as well as our Department of Public Health. And I'm the chair of the department. I've been there for a little over 6 years. Prior to that, I was here in Rapid City as the executive director of the Great Plains Tribal Chairman's Health Board, but I've been at NDSU now a little over 6 years. And in that role, we started a new Master of Public Health program. So it's a master's degree focused on public health. And we have 4 specializations, including health promotion, infectious disease, clinical systems, and American Indian public health. So we're the only Master of Public Health in the nation that has an American Indian focus. So I've been very pleased with our outcomes. In our 6 years, we've now matriculated 137 students, and of that, 35 are American Indian, including many from right here in South Dakota. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm really pleased with those outcomes. So on the educational side, we're doing a lot in terms of graduate level training in public health and strong focus on addressing American Indian public health issues. But we also house the American Indian Public Health Resource Center, and that's funded primarily by the Helmsley Charitable Trust. Some of the viewers may have heard of that organization. They're based in New York City, but they do have a branch in Sioux Falls, right here in South Dakota. And the branch in Sioux Falls focuses on rural health. So I've worked with them on a number of projects, including this resource center. And through the resource center, we've now been able to work with every tribe in some capacity in Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota.
Sure. And so could you talk a little bit about the importance and the need for medical professionals who happen to be Native American, happen to be living in tribal communities, and what is the benefit of having those young specialists, nurses, doctors, administrators who are young Native children, young Native men and women?
Yeah, it's vitally important, to promote cultural competence in the workplace, particularly in healthcare. We need diversity in the workforce. And one of our big challenges associated with poverty is that we also have higher rates of dropout, unfortunately. So a higher percentage of our people don't finish high school. So the pool of people going into college is smaller. And then we have lower rates of college graduation. So the pool of people eligible for medical school or a master's degree is even smaller. So the numbers of our people who are going into these professions are lower as a result. And that does have an impact on quality and cultural competence in the workplace. And that's one of our main areas of focus, is to try to build that pipeline so we can have more of our own people on that pathway going toward the health professions. And also well-trained in prevention. So we need people, going back to the story of three sisters, we need people who can manage a crisis. We need people who can manage chronic disease, but we also need people who can focus on prevention and working upstream.
That would be another example of the third sister swimming upstream to
Yeah.
kind of deal with the problem at the head of the river there. So,
Yeah.
Well, let's see. What tribes is NDSU currently working with when it comes to what your research is there, what your, the tentacles of your research, or what you're doing for the area?
Great question. A lot of exciting projects. So through our resource center and then some of my own work individually, we've been doing a lot of projects related to public health policy, public health research, public health education, and public health services. So on the policy side, we're working with the White Earth Nation in Minnesota with their 638 feasibility study. And I'm sure people know the Public Law 93-638 is what allows tribes to take over the management of healthcare systems from Indian Health Service. So we're working with White Earth Nation doing that. We're working actually with every tribe in Minnesota evaluating their statewide health improvement plans, which includes tobacco control and obesity prevention. One of our newer projects, it's very exciting, we're working with the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians in North Dakota, and there's a huge problem, as most of us know, with addiction and opiates in particular. And there's very good medication that can assist in treating opiate addiction, but providers have to be certified. And most of our providers in IHS are not certified to provide this service. So we're working in collaboration with Avera to also provide telemedicine-based medication-assisted treatment for opiate addiction. Another project, we're developing smartphone applications to help with diabetes management. Yeah, so that's in collaboration with our Department of Computer Science. And they're developing these wonderful phone applications where they can track, of course, steps like a Fitbit, but also track blood sugar. So when people check their blood sugar at home, it'll be Bluetooth connected to the smartphone and automatically sent to the provider with automated text messages back.
Isn't that something?
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And just recently, Billy Mills, one of our heroes, of course,
Yes.
has agreed to provide some diabetes education messaging through those smartphone apps. So what if you could get a brief video from
Yeah.
Billy Mills encouraging you?
Yeah, telling you to get
Yeah.
out and exercise, get that 30 minutes in per day and
Exactly.
stuff. That would be something.
Yeah, and then I worked with 7 of the 9 tribes in South Dakota to do a study on adverse childhood experiences. That was just published last month, actually, and so all kinds of work. That's just scratching the surface, but we've got probably 25 or 30 research and public health services projects going on in collaboration with tribes.
Sure. I can honestly admit I'd probably be a little bit motivated if I saw Billy Mills appear on my phone telling me to get out. And,
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah, yeah. Seeing his image in when he won his gold medal would just inspire me, definitely. Let's see, I understand you were recently published in the Journal of Healthcare for the Poor and Underserved. Could you tell us a little bit about your publishing?
Yeah, so I've published a lot of my research in various journals, and the one that was just published in November of 2017 is focused on disparities in adverse childhood experiences among American Indians in South Dakota. So this was part of the South Dakota Health Survey, which was funded by the Helmsley Charitable Trust. And in that survey, we included things like screening for depression, screening for anxiety, post-traumatic stress, addiction, and then also the Adverse Childhood Experiences Questionnaire. And the ACE, or Adverse Childhood Experiences Questionnaire, includes 10 domains or 10 types of adverse experiences related to abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. And you basically get an ACE score of 0 through 10. And what we found, unfortunately, but not unexpectedly, is that for American Indians, our childhood experiences are more adverse than the non-Indian population. And the higher your ACE score, or the more adversity people have in childhood, the worse their health status is as adults, whether it's mental health or chronic diseases.
That correlation is something else, and just to see where the research is at now compared to 20, 30 years ago, even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sir, we're going to take a break, Dr. Warren, and when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about well, Chief Stabber you're a descendant of Chief Stabber, so I want to learn a little bit more about that. We'll talk about your mother, Bev Warne, as well. She's a very well-respected elder here in Rapid City, so I'd like to talk a little bit about your family, if you don't mind, when we get back. So we'll get back, or we'll hear a little bit more from Dr. Warne after a word from our sponsors.
When discrimination happens in our community, and it does happen,
then it's time to stand up
and speak out to make it stop.
Discrimination hurts and excludes.
We can be better than that.
People of Black Hills have a connection to each other, and none of us deserve discrimination.
The Rapid City Human Relations Commission can help with discrimination issues in housing, employment, and public accommodations.
And each of us, when we see it or hear it,
can do our part to end discrimination.
You have a responsibility to stand up and speak out.
Hi, welcome back to Oyate Today. I'm your host, Richie Richards. Our guest tonight, once again, is Dr. Donald Warne of North Dakota State University. Dr. Warne, this has been a great discussion. I wanted to learn a little bit more about Chief Stabber. I understand you're a descendant of Chief Stabber. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So Chief Stabber was one of the delegation that came from the Oyate Nation. I don't like to say Sioux delegation, we're Oyate, so.
Sure, sure.
But one of the delegation leaders that was sent to Washington, D.C. when they were doing negotiations with the federal government back in the 1870s and 1880s. And Chief Stabber was one of the members of that delegation. And a lot of the chiefs had photos taken while they were there in Washington, D.C. And there was one picture of him that they thought it might be Crazy Horse, but it was actually Chief Stabber.
Sure.
And Mr. Tim Gallego had that original photo, and he gave that to my family as a gift, which was just a wonderful thing. But Chief Stabber was a great leader, and he's buried in Kyle, and he's from Medicine Root District, so Prejurtahaka District, where I am from. And so right there in Kyle. And Chief Stabber's son was Crandall Stabber. Crandall's son was Louis Stabber, and Louis's daughter was my mom. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm Beverly Warne. Yeah, yes. Yeah, and so Chief Stabber is my great-great-grandfather, and my oldest son I named Kyle after Pejurtahaka, mm-hmm. And my youngest son is named Crandall after my great-great-grandfather. So for my mom, she has a grandfather Crandall and a grandson Crandall as well.
Wow, isn't that something? And understand, Bev Warne has actually been heavily involved in Rapid City with a lot of different projects, including a kind of a nursing program with, is it USD or South Dakota State University?
Primarily South Dakota State University,
yes.
But they work collaboratively with USD as well as Oglala Lakota College, and trying to increase the number of American Indians in nursing in particular. And I hope you can have a chance to interview her at some point. She had a very successful program at Arizona State University for more than a decade, and they wound up graduating, I think, 14 Doctor of Nursing Practice graduates who are American Indian from Arizona State. It's really unheard of numbers. And she retired. I like to say she failed retirement because she's not
Yeah.
back working.
Yeah.
She's almost 80, but she's still working.
Yeah.
And she's running this American Indian nursing program out of Rapid City. And they currently have 28 American Indian students in the pre-nursing and nursing program. So the future looks really bright. And I feel like when I think about the 7th generation, and I think about my family, and I think about what's happening here, we have a lot of adversity and a lot of challenges and a lot of improvements to make, but I feel like we're on the right path. And I think more of our young people are wanting to be a part of the solution, and that is very encouraging to me.
Just from your vision and from your experience and what you're working on, what would be an ideal situation for, say, a healthcare facility in Pine Ridge or one of the reservations? What would be an ideal situation for that facility to function in a way that includes both traditional medicines and Western medicines? How does all of that work, and how does that vision from your perspective, how does that all kind of go into place?
Well, fortunately, we have models from other communities, other states, where tribes are taking over the management of their local health systems, but they also have plenty of their own tribal members who are health professionals. And we see this in Arizona, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Alaska. Unfortunately, not yet here in South Dakota, but we're on that path. And if I could envision a good health system at Pine Ridge or any of our other communities, it would be for Lakotas by Lakotas. And we would be the healthcare providers, the doctors, the nurses, the therapists, and the administrators. And when we own the health system, we're much more invested in it than if it's just a service provided by the federal government. And healthcare is not just a service. Healthcare is an industry. Healthcare is a way to promote health, is a way to promote the economy in a community. And we have those opportunities if we choose to go in that direction. But one of the key upstream elements is education. We need more of our own people finishing college. We need more of our own people going into medicine, nursing, and administration and business and education. So,
yes.
So what I would envision in the future is a health system in which we're controlling it. We're integrating traditional medicine because we know it works. And we would be setting our own future for future generations.
Do you think that's a possibility here in South Dakota?
Absolutely. I know it's a possibility. I know that we can do it. And when again, looking at the strength of our traditional leaders and the strength of our elders, and just knowing that 7 generations ago, they were praying for us. You know, I take a lot of strength in that every day, knowing that these wonderful, beautiful, powerful people were praying for me. They were praying for you. They were praying for all of us. We have the strength and the capability to do it if we choose to take those steps.
And healthcare is a choice then?
Absolutely.
Healthy
yeah,
lifestyle,
we can choose
living.
to go in that direction. We need services to help promote that. We certainly need to promote healthier childhoods for our future generations. And I think it'll take a generation to promote healing of unresolved trauma. But I see us going in that direction, so I'm encouraged about the future.
You've given me a lot of hope, sir. I want to thank you, Dr. Warne, for being here tonight. I want to thank our producers, our sponsors, and I want to thank you for making Oyate Today a part of your night.
You've been watching Oyate Today, brought to you by Native Sun News Today.